You gonna let me go? Welcome to Stand Up Memories. I'm Peter Bales. This is Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
I interrupt him.
usually
That's our little thing.
That's your thing?
I interrupt him.
Okay.
Because
like
he's so dull. That, I mean, look at the shirt.
We have a terrific, one of the originals of Long Island comedy who has had a terrific career and is still going strong, and his name is Rob Bartlett. He is our guest.
And we are thrilled. It's funny, because we had Bob Nelson the other day. Him and you and me, the only three so far now that have been on the show from the very inappropriately coined Magnificent Seven. From
right, because there were 8 of us.
I'll never know. Myers actually came up with that. And I can still hear him saying, Jack, how about this? The 7 hardest hitting comedians on Long Island. I'm like, who are you talking about? Jesus Christ.
I was a member of the Magnificent 47. I came a little bit later to the Long Island scene,
and we said we'd explain. Jim Myers was also one of the guys that we had started out with way back when God created heaven and earth.
And you have memories of Dixon's White House.
Sure.
Was that your first foray into this?
Yeah. I had a brief earlier in the year, like in the fall, the previous fall. I had a gig as like the house comedian at a place called the Cork and Board on Hempstead Turnpike, right near Hofstra. I was working as a janitor in Manhattan. My uncle was a building superintendent at an office building, 1775 Broadway and 57th Street.
It pays to know somebody.
Oh, please. Up in the world, babe, cleaning toilets for a living.
It's who you know.
And one of the guys I worked with, a guy named Igor Mucha, was a little bit older than I was. And so, of course, we were pals, and I would imitate the guys we worked with. I would do impressions of them, and I would also imitate some of the people who worked in the building we would see all the time. And I would make him laugh. Half the time he was always toasted. And he said, I got a friend of mine who owns this wine and cheese cafe. That's when the wine and cheese craze was really big in the late 70s. And, why don't you try doing some stand-up? So I put together a couple pieces of material that I thought, and I went up, and it was a folk music act, Lee and Lynn. I'll never forget it. And he was, I think, a brother of one of the Stray Cats. I don't know which one he was a brother of. But it was Lee and Lynn, and they were like an item, and they ended their set with setting the woods on fire. And they introduced me, and I went up, and I did my 20 minutes, whatever it was. And there were about 9 people in the audience. And then I relaxed, and I broke my cherry, and I got free wine and free beer, which I helped myself.
This is a couple months before you found Dixon's, or a year before?
Yes, it's a couple of months, because that following February I found Dixon's. I saw an ad in the Long Island Press, that's how long ago it was, and I went. It was a Wednesday night. I got on, I think, at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. There were more comedians, more acts on the bill than there were in the audience. And so I never went back. And then, like the following summer, I started going to this Irving Dalvin's Comedy Arts Workshop. I don't know who he was, but he just thought that he could teach comedy. And it was just a group of people. We'd meet at the Improv before the show started, and we would do material, and we would critique each other, whatever. And Bobby Collins was one of the guys in the group. And Bobby says, have you done Dixon's? I said, yeah, I did it once. I'm never going back. It's just so. He says, no, they're hanging off the rafters now. And I went back the following Wednesday. And
it found its legs,
Found its legs, and then never looked back. But.
Did you get good at Dixon's, or was it the original East Side where you felt good about your act?
I've never felt good about my act, even to this day. I've never felt. And when I first started
Dixon's,
healthy.
That's healthy.
I worked with a suitcase. I had props. I had a guitar. I worked with a suitcase until the early days of East Side, when I think I forgot it, and I just decided to go without it. And there was a purity to it. And I don't think I was as concerned with how good I was than just the passion and
the stage and the people
and the people and,
you,
and just
you
the,
were
and
doing
the,
it.
and the guys.
You
I mean,
were
it was all
doing
about the guys. It was we were this group. I'd found my tribe, and that was like the greatest thing about it was that I finally found a group where I belonged, and we just had the best time. I remember one of the first paying gigs we had because we didn't get even car fare initially at Dixon's, and it was the Smithtown Landing Country Club, and it was Jackie and me and Myers and Hawthorne. I don't know if Bobby.
I
either
think
of the
Nelson
Bobbies were
might
there.
have. I
Nelson
meant to
might
ask
have been
him.
there. Nelson might have been there, and it was this woman who decided she was going to put on a comedy night at the Smithtown Landing, and we were the first. We were the first time, and she had no microphone stand. It was just a handheld microphone. And meanwhile, Bobby and I are working out a suitcase, and Hawthorne. The three of us had suitcases, and so they went to the game room and they got a pool cue. And they got some duct tape, and they duct taped the microphone to the pool cue and set it in an umbrella stand. And as long as I live, and of course we've
been talking about that for 40
and
years.
we were going nuts. We were just having so much fun watching each other die like dogs. And I'll never forget, Hawthorne did one of his things and waited for the applause, which didn't happen. And then he just turned and he went like this with the pool cue. The butt will be ready in about a minute. And that was it. We were done.
We were dying. God, I have a couple pictures from that night, and I have
I'd
one
love
from
to
the
see those.
side where he's wearing his fez,
Right.
and he's doing goopty.
Goopty.
You did not throw the voice, you
You
captured
catch the
the
thoughts.
thoughts. Oh my,
Wait,
it's so
two-
funny. I can remember stuff from 40 years ago, from those first beginning times, and then there's decades of nothing.
Oh,
But
I can't remember
those-
what I had for lunch yesterday.
But if you're going from 79 to 80, being a comedian then was like being a fighter pilot. There weren't that many.
Yeah, especially on Long Island. I mean, that was one of
right.
the beautiful parts about what we were doing is because we were it. We made the rules.
Right.
We created it, and so that was our benefit.
I remember Rick Overton said to me at some point, he said, do you realize in the United States there are 150,000 brain surgeons and only 120 comedians, something like that.
Wow.
And I thought that was so funny.
Now it's probably opposite.
Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely. So,
I don't know how we were there together, but I distinctly remember I was sitting with you and me, because we wanted to see this guy, Otto, with
I was
Otto
the
and
house
George.
MC, and you were on the show with Otto.
Is
I
that what
booked
it-
you and Otto.
And we had never seen him before, and we sat there, and I actually rolled my micro cassette tape, and I had it for so long. We literally were, screaming,
Oh,
screaming.
I'll never forget that as long as I live.
The impact of the first time, because we were right there.
Yep.
Oh, God.
I remember Vic Sussman, the guy who owned
the Rainy Night
the
House.
Rainy Night House,
Yes.
who owned the Rainy Night House. And I remember him coming up to me afterwards going, what did you book? What did you book? Because Otto, of course, Otto and George. And it always amused me that George was the dummy and Otto was
Yes.
the ventriloquist. I always thought that should have been the other way around.
Everybody.
But
everybody.
he was the most inappropriate, politically incorrect. There was an Asian couple up front, and George just attacked him.
Yes.
You people aren't happy unless you got a monster chasing you. And Jackie and I were literally like
I
falling
can
out of the
still
chair.
remember because the Asian couple was right there, and Otto just took George and put the dummy's face right in her face. Excuse me, miss, are my shirts ready? Holy
man.
We
Christ.
couldn't- we
and meanwhile, it was part of his act, and
It
we
was.
thought he was making it up as
Yeah,
he went
we did,
along.
we did, but
Oh, God.
Otto and George, the late Otto and George, a legendary ventriloquist. You should Google, you should see what he did. It was Springtime for Hitler. It was so bad, it was good.
So
But having
over the
said
top.
that, to be fair, there was an element of cruelty at times to what he was doing.
An element,
An element, I
an
mean,
elephant. It's crazy.
I
he
did
was
see
a
him.
very complex man. And I remember one of the times I had him at Rainy Night House, he did a set, killed. There were a couple of people who were offended. He walked. There was no green room. There was an alley in the back.
Right.
And he walked out into the alley with George and was talking to George. You screwed up that line about whatever. And he was actually having a conversation with nobody else around with George. So there were.
No. And he was so, unless you saw that happening,
Right.
he was so normal.
Oh, absolutely.
And not just
Shy.
normal,
Sweet
but
and gentle.
Shy off stage.
Very shy, very withdrawn.
One time I was giving him a ride back to Manhattan from a Jersey gig, and I asked for, so where do you live? And he goes, just drop me off here under the George Washington Bridge.
Oh, wow.
He was, as I would say, and you would say, complex.
There was also the story about how he didn't have a phone in his apartment. He used the payphone that was outside on the sidewalk. So he'd call the number, and somebody walking by would pick up the phone, and you were given instructions. Tell them to shout to the third floor. I mean,
which is Broadway Danny Rose
Yeah.
material.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's not apocryphal. He did work as a street performer. He did insult a passerby, or the dummy did, George. And the passerby did stab the dummy.
Stab the dummy.
That actually happened. And it went into
All right.
Right into his hand.
Otto's
Otto,
hand.
we love you.
We
So
lo-
you wound up on Broadway.
Yeah. I mean, we're taking about 20 years. out of-
No, but I'm saying
Yeah.
I want to get off
Yeah.
the Otto and George
Yeah,
story.
yeah. Yeah, I ended up on Broadway through the back door. It started out innocently enough. I was one of the last, if not the last, act at the Sands in Vegas, on the stage that the Rat Pack had performed at, and this theater producer, Mitchell Maxwell, who had produced Damn Yankees with Jerry Lewis on Broadway, a couple of others. He owned a few off-Broadway houses. And he won, I don't know, 15 grand at the roulette table, was feeling good, saw my name, recognized me from Imus, went and saw the show, and then contacted Gary saying, I'd like to meet you because I have an idea. So they came to my suite, which was apparently the suite that JFK had stayed at when he was there.
Wow.
And the shag carpet was the original shag carpet that had been there in the 60s. So
Whoa.
you didn't want to walk around without socks on,
Right.
And
Okay.
there was a back entrance that they slipped Marilyn in and out of. And so we sat down and he said, how about, would you like to, the stupid Apple Watch, the Siri just
I
starts
don't
talking to me for no
understand them
reason.
either.
Shut up, bitch!
1995, Timex.
Yeah,
Not
well,
a
that's it.
problem.
Yeah, I know. So we're going to put you in one of the off-Broadway houses. So, yeah, sure. And Gary and I were talking. This is when I think Defending the Caveman was big. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So Gary and I were talking. He said, it'd be great if you could do something more than just your act, if you could add to it. So I thought, maybe I'll try to write some stuff as connective tissue, because my act has always been characters, different characters and whatnot. And I remember one of my greatest influences was Jonathan Winters, and he had a show where they would set him loose in the attic, and there would just be all these things around, and he would pick up an umbrella and do
go
40
nuts,
minutes
right.
with the umbrella. I said, so I'm gonna be cleaning up my garage. That'll be the theme. And then I wrote this story about, because at the time I just turned 40, and about the very strained relationship I had with my father, and so I had like this little story, which really wasn't a play. And we cast some people, and I did it out of town. I did it in Stanford Center for the Arts. And got legitimate Broadway people to direct it and be in it. And we got mixed reviews. Some, didn't hate it, and some just thought it was the worst thing they'd ever seen. So there was a summer there where they brought on Jack O'Brien, who directed Hairspray, and he's directed Shucked, that's playing now on Broadway. The Fumanti, he's a legendary Broadway musical director, a brilliant man. And Dana Reeve, Christopher Reeve's wife, and Joyce Van Patten got cast. And I rewrote it and condensed it. And we're all set to go to this off-Broadway house in the middle of rehearsals, and we're rehearsing at Lincoln Center, because somebody had a deal where they could get us in for free at Lincoln Center. And we get the word that there's a Broadway house open, the Eugene O'Neill Theater. There was a play in London, the transfer, British play called The Herbal Bed, and it closed sooner than they expected. And they offered it to us, and the producer said, yeah. So now I'm going to open on Broadway with the show that I wrote and I'm starring in. And the pull quote from the Times Review, we had 16 previews and 4 performances, and the pull quote from the Times Review was, "Avert your eyes." So it's not exactly the kind of thing that you could hang on the marquee to, encourage ticket sales. And
Close the show and keep the store open late.
exactly, yeah. And so, a year went by.
But you did it.
Yeah, but again, falling into, I was just talking about this, that thing that I did over at Cinema. It's the same thing, falling in through the back door. It's like, Steve Martin always said that when the bus shows up, you better have your bags packed. My bags were packed, and I thought, well, I missed that bus, But
when you're up there, nobody knows what door you
well,
came
that's
in,
it. That's the thing. And I used to think that people who were there were some special rarefied air people. They were all just like me, and that was like the big wake-up call. There wasn't any reason why I couldn't have been there.
Yeah.
Everybody has their story. Now, I have never known what was the series of whatever happened that you wound up with Don Imus. Don Imus was incredibly famous, very, very.
He was the first shock jock.
First shock jock that was around forever and ever, but he's been gone for
4 years, 5 years. Oh, he's dead.
I thought it
passed.
was longer than that.
But he.
And Rob was a huge part of that show.
Yeah, I was a writer and a performer on that show for 31 years.
31 years.
31
wow.
years. And it was great because it was a gig in town that I could do and then still do all the Broadway stuff in the evening, There was a time when we were simulcast on MSNBC, and their studios were in Secaucus. And I was rehearsing The Odd Couple with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick and Brad Garrett during the afternoon. And I would come from MSNBC after doing the radio show, go right to rehearsal. And then one day Neil Simon says to me, he says, I don't know, can you do me a favor? So Neil Simon asked you to do a favor. I say, no, I'm sorry, I can't. He said, the guy who's playing Herman in Sweet Charity around the corner with Christina Applegate has to leave unexpectedly. We have Wayne Knight. Newman from Seinfeld coming in, but not until the fall. Can you do the part just for the summer? And it was like, I don't know, 12 or 16 lines and a song. And so I said, yeah. So my day would be, I'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning so I could be in the car at 5 to get to Secaucus by 6 to get into full costume and makeup for whatever character I was doing for the Imus show. We do the show until 10, hang around till about 11, go back into the city to do rehearsal with Matthew and Nathan. After that, I'd get something to eat, like around 5 or 6, and then go to the theater to prep to do Sweet Charity with Christina Applegate. And I did that for an entire summer. And,
Wow.
But the fact that I had Imus as, the bottom line, I had that, it was great. And then a lot of what I got was because of the exposure I got on Imus and that being associated with that
So
show.
what was the best part of Imus? And there must have been frustrations as well.
Oh, it's like any gig. I mean, you experience the same thing as you're dealing with people who are at the top of their game, who are, used to getting everything done their way. And there's a certain personality that goes with that. He was a very complicated guy. He could be very, very difficult. He could be really horribly mean, but he also...
And the next breath, he could be the sweetest
the most
person.
magnanimous, loveliest, sweetest, thoughtful guy on the planet.
You don't know who's coming through the door.
No, he's a complete enigma. And it was just, but, the influence that had on my career. I mean, that's how Mitchell Maxwell knew me. That's how... there was a casting agent, unfortunately, he's passed, and who also knew me from Imus. And the hell's his name? It's going to kill me now. I can't remember his name. But he got me to audition for this thing called City Center Encores. They do like a season of like 4 or 5 shows that have never had a revival. And they do it like an in-concert thing. You get cast on a Monday, you go into rehearsals on Tuesday, and then you start performances on Friday for 2 weekends. And so I did Golden Boy for Walter Bobby, who directed Chicago. And then a year later, I'm having lunch with Joyce Van Patten, and Walter's in the room. And I had done something during the show that Walter asked me to do, wanted me to cover some time when they were transitioning between 2. They were lowering these huge curtains from the ceiling to go from one scene to another. He says, can you say something? Because it's taking too long. And so it came down, and during one of the rehearsals, I just went, "What a fakakta schmata," and it stuck. And he thought that was great. So we're having lunch. He's worked with Joyce, so we all sit together and we're having lunch. 2 days later, I get a call from Gary. "You have an audition for Chicago." I said, "What?" He said, "Walter Bobby, the director, asked you." I said, "What am I supposed to do?" He says, "Go see the Wednesday matinee. When you're done, see Bob Billig, the musical director, and go up on stage and sing Mr. Cellophane, sing Cellophane, and then that's it." So I do that. I see the matinee, and I'm waiting, and then the ushers come down and says, "You got to leave." I said, I'm here to go." "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Rob Bartlett. I'm on the Amish show." He goes, "I'm a Stern fan." And so, and then at that point, Bob comes out, and I go up on the stage at Schubert Theater. I sing Cellophane. Back in the car, half the way home, I get a call from Gary. "You got the part." So it's like, again, it's like this
Chance.
in through the back, this chance. But, fortunately, I'd had the experience. He recognized that, asked me to do it. It's one of the greatest things. That
What do
could
you
ever
like
happen.
best of all?
Luck favors the prepared.
Well, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true.
What do you like best?
Jay Binder was his name.
Jay
Jay
Binder.
Great guy, lovely guy, a brilliant casting director.
What do you like best? Stand-up, live stage performing as an actor, or, you've done your share of scripted television as well.
Yeah, it's
It's Law and Order fun.
Law and Order. All of them are fun. I mean, and they shoot so many things in Manhattan now. Law and Order SVU, which is, if you're an actor at all in New York, it's a law that you have to do at least one episode of Law and Order SVU. You open up any playbill on Broadway, and every single bio and who's who, they've done a Law and Order SVU. I got to do 5 episodes of that, and the way that I got that was the guy who was the set designer was the set designer for this off-Broadway show I did called Tabletop, and so the guys from the Law and Order came in, and I got 5 episodes of that, and then I got 3 episodes on The Good Wife, which was great because I got to work with Juliana Margulies. And then the last thing I did, I was in the last season of Elementary. I had a 5-episode story arc as the police captain who took over for Aidan Quinn when he got shot at the end of the 6th season, which was just
All
great.
such great stuff.
It's what's great is how professional it is, and how everyone could not be nicer, and everyone is so accommodating. Lucy Liu, we'd finish a take, and she goes, "Do you want to do another one? Is there something else you want to do?" It always reminds me of the time when, in Fort Lauderdale, the comic strip, when Rodney used to come in and try out material, and then he'd ask me for advice. "Should I open with this, or should I put this here? What'd you think of that?"
And you're pinching yourself.
Yeah, it's like Rodney's asking me, But it seems like the bigger they are, the more down to earth they are, I'd say that for me, I got into stand-up to become an actor. I always wanted to be an actor. And when I first started, it's when Robin Williams and Steve Martin made the transition. So I thought that was the quickest way of getting to be an actor. And so that's what I did, is I did the stand-up to get there. And stand-up has its moments. They all have their moments.
You did the stand-up to get there.
Yeah.
What do you feel like now when you go back to stand-up?
It's funny because I just did my act for the first time since Bobby's benefit. So it's going on 3 years now? So I was really rusty, but a lot of it came back, And it is different in that you have the control and you can actually break the fourth wall and interact with the audience, and then you have control over, do I do this now? Do I bring this back? Do I omit this? Or, and then you do the stuff.
You have that freedom in your head now,
Right. So, doing the crowd work was fun, and the control and the power of controlling a room. But there's something about doing a Broadway show when, you finish your number and you get this enormous response from a theater full of people. And then at the end of shooting the last episode of Elementary, it was a location shoot at a cop bar in Queens. And you do a rap, and as they do on Saturdays, that's a series rap for Rob Bartlett, and the whole crew applauds like this. And I walk out the door, and my last scene was with Aidan Quinn. And I walk out the door, and Aidan is standing right there, and he goes like this, and he turns his hand like that, and he had gotten everybody the extras who weren't in there and all the crew and everybody lined up on either side all the way to my trailer to give me.
Oh,
I
that's
mean, so it's like those kinds of moments you can't, so they all have their moments. I mean, I like all of it. And I am so grateful for the blessing of being able to do this. It's like when I look back, all the things, being one of the first hosts of WWF Monday Night Raw for 13 weeks. It's like I've done so much weird stuff, and it all has its place. And there's all great stories.
Well, I'm going to spin this. That stand-up gave you the chance to go off in those directions.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, a lot of it was gaining confidence, and we all go into this because we didn't get that approval that we
and every
so
single
desperately
thing, however big, however small, they're all building blocks.
Absolutely, all steps.
The failures, the successes, they all add up to.
You learn more from the failures than you do the successes.
Well, then you should know a lot more.
Yeah, that's how come
I see what you did there,
that's how
Peter.
come
I
I'm,
saw what you
that's
did
how
there. It
come
was
I'm
nice.
here with you.
See, I knew that was coming. What's our lesson here, class? Stand-up memories leads to memories in other aspects of show business. Radio, television, Broadway, what haven't you
still
done?
And then you
thinks
get
he's-
your face on a cup.
When
He
you
still
get a
thinks
mug.
he sounds like a professor, and he just
But
doesn't.
he is, isn't he?
I am a professor, and there is no homework. Rob, we got to get you on again. We scratched the surface. You are wonderful, wonderful stand-up, and I do hope that you get back to stand-up just for selfish reasons, because I love
Why,
your-
you need material?
I do. You know what? When I hear the Beatles song, She Loves You, I don't think of the Beatles, I think of you.
Wow. That's,
That bit where you imitate the Beatles, is that online? Can people Google that? Does that exist?
Don't
it is
think so.
It is amazing. I mean,
don't think so.
I loved it. Everybody loved it. What a talent. I mean, I could never do something like that.
but it's all stuff. It's like I did that when I was a kid. It's all, the way
Right,
you draw
right.
stuff, for your act. It comes from everywhere. I tell one of the jokes in my Pope bit comes from my high school girlfriend's father. It's like you pull
great.
stuff from everywhere.
That's great.
But
This has been Rob Bartlett, super guest.
Wait.
Genuinely, yeah, we're going to applaud all the way to your trailer. But really, when it comes to show business, I would describe him as a Renaissance man, a man who does
Absolutely.
many different things.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
fancy
gracing
words.
our couch.
Thank you.
Our stand-up
I
memories
left
couch.
a little present for you.
I was so afraid of that.
Bladder problems, I'll just say.
This has been Stand-Up Memories. Of course, thank you, Rob Bartlett. And of course, Jackie the Joke Man Martling. And I am Peter Bales. And we will see you next time on Stand-Up Memories.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
That was a pretty good episode.
A new episode every Wednesday with me, Peter Bales, Jackie the Joke Man Martling, comedians, interesting people. Leave a comment. We'll get what am I saying?
I don't know.
We're gonna get back to you. We will respond to your comment.
StandUpMemories.com, if you go there, it shows all the different
All
platforms.
Spotify, we're on everything.
Every Wednesday.
Stand Up Memories,
Every Wednesday.
a new episode.